Here from the Hannibal TV.com, and I just finished watching the full interview that everybody's talking about this week and last week with David Grush, who is a whistleblower. For anyone that doesn't know, he's an Air Force veteran from Pittsburgh who was part of the military intelligence and the unidentified aerial phenomenon task force. He resigned on his own accord because he feels it's more important to get this word out from the outside right now rather than inside. But I'm going to review this crazy interview that he did, and I believe him. He's a legitimate military intelligence person coming out trying to get disclosure, and he's also made formal complaints that contain classified pictures and information from the government. And he's made these complaints to the Inspector General of the Intelligence Service, who deemed them urgent and credible. For everyone taking shots at him, this guy is legitimate. And this was quite an interview. He was taking great personal and professional risk by coming out. He waited 4 years to file his complaint, and he made this complaint based on the credentials of people that he worked with on the UAP task force, the documents he's read, the pictures he's seen, the foreign intelligence he's aware of, and specific details on how everything worked. Now, I'm going to get into the details of this extended interview. And as I said, some of this stuff is really mind blowing, especially someone like me that's been researching this subject for over 10 years now. Actually, I would say close to 13 or 14 years, seriously. So, basically, he's saying that the United States is in possession of aircraft that was basically built by non-human intelligence. And why he says non-human intelligence rather than aliens is he himself is not actually sure where they come from. They could be from somewhere on this earth where we don't know, Antarctica, underwater. They could be from another dimension. He's not exactly sure. They could be from another planet. He's just classifying them as non-human intelligence. And he says we're absolutely not alone. He's unequivocally saying we are not alone. As an intelligence officer on the UAP task force, he's very well aware that we are not alone and that there is also a disinformation campaign that has targeted the US populace for decades now. He says we have intact craft as well as partially intact craft, and there have been some bodies recovered. He has documents and photos that would prove his claim that he has submitted to the Inspector General. However, he can't just submit these to the public or he would face severe consequences. He says there's other secrets that he knows from the government that he's not going to come forward with related to other matters, but he feels this is a highly important matter. And as I said, the Inspector General has actually publicly said he can say that the Inspector General deemed his information urgent and credible. So he says he doesn't know if the craft travels through space as we know it. They could be coming from a higher dimensional physical place that might be co-located here. He's not sure on that one. He said the cover-up has existed for 90 years since the first craft recovery in 1933 in Italy, in Magneta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact craft there, where the government moved it to secure airspace in Italy for the duration of the fascist regime until around 1945, when Pope Pius XII back-channeled that information that the Italians had that craft to the Americans, who ended up obtaining that craft. So the Vatican has been aware of the existence of non-human intelligence on the planet since at least around that time, when they were part of the arrangement to get the craft to the U.S. Apparently, the Roswell incident, which he cannot talk about, he's not legally allowed to talk about it through his. He's been legally permitted to talk about certain things, but not others. He says that there was a craft that crashed in the desert near the town of Roswell. The Air Force discovered the material, and it was described as metallic and rubbery. The government first called it a flying disc. Then at other times they called it a weather balloon and spy balloon. Reminds me of, I know we got at least one spy balloon this year, but there was 3 other mysterious balloons shot down by missiles that we never actually saw the debris of. The officer says that the government added additional elements to the Roswell story over time to further decredit the people of Roswell. For some UFOs that have been recovered, some have been landed and they've obtained them somehow. Others have crashed. As far as how can such advanced species crash vehicles, the officer says there's always a small percentage of a chance that something's going to crash. I mean, you can't always guarantee that something's not going to crash, but he's not saying that they're all crashed vehicles. And this isn't in this report, but there has been talk that the government in the U.S. alone could be in possession of as many as 12 crashed vehicles. He says the reason for secrecy is pugilistic dominance on who can have the technology first, and it's all related to war. And the other interesting thing, I'll bring this up after. I'll get back into it. Apparently, in the 50s and 60s, he says there were instances where UAPs tampered with nuclear missiles at the Monstrum Air Force Base in Montana. There were craft appearing to be intelligently controlled, hovering over nuclear silos, and at least 10 nuclear missiles were shut down. He says that whoever's monitoring us understands how far we've advanced. It might be innocent scientific gathering that they're doing. Could be deep hole probing that they're doing. He says the crash retrieval program still continues. The people working with this technology have been putting themselves at risk. Some have been injured dealing with the material, looking at some of the parts. Others have been injured and had biological issues and have suffered physically from working with it. Obviously, we don't know where this is coming from. There's risks for the military people that have worked on this. He is stating from the documents he's seen, some of these people have been physically harmed through their service. Regarding the 2015 footage that came out, this footage, he said he did study it with his role in the UAP task force, and he said it's definitely not a jet from his research, possibly a natural phenomenon. Regarding the famous Tic Tac, he also worked on that. This was from 2004. He said this is a vehicle physically not from this world. He said there's other footage that has not been released of vehicles as long as football fields that are much more menacing and shocking. They have not come out yet. Regarding the USS Omaha footage that came out recently, he also says there's no tangible explanation from this for this craft when they examined that footage. And as far as the by the way, this is a Middle Eastern UFO that a U.S. drone picked up that was recently officially released by the government as well. And as far as these football field long one, this is just a drawing of one, of a Mura Mura that Avi Loeb discovered. Those ones could be scary. I mean, that's a drawing one. That's not he's saying the military hasn't released any of the footage of that. And by the way, regarding the Tic Tac and the Nimitz footage, there's longer videos. Apparently the videos are about 10 minutes long of those. They only released a few seconds of it. He also says there's at least one private aerospace company storing alien craft. He's not going to say where they all are. Apparently the government contacts these companies privately to do secret analysis of these crafts. He says some elected officials are not read in on this information, so not necessarily all presidents know about this. He says the Pentagon saying they have found no credible evidence of UAP activity. He does not know why they're saying that. He says, in his opinion, it's misleading the U.S. public, and he's been aware of lies that have been made related to this subject over the years. He says what the intent of these things are. He says we'll never know, or he will never know their intent, but it appears to be negative based on what he is aware of as far as the nuclear site probings, witness testimony, and there have been injuries due to these craft. He says there have been attempts to bring these craft down, and they have developed. This is interesting. There's been techniques developed to deal with some of these crafts, so maybe they have found a way to take some of these crafts down. He said he can't get into the specifics of the dangers towards humans related to this situation, but he can confirm that some humans have been hurt and killed related to this. The reporter then says, have some humans been murdered by these visitors? And he's basically agreeing to that without saying murder. He says these beings have been around for centuries through wars, famine, etc. They appear neutral on humans, what humans decide to do to each other. He mentions that China and Russia have their own crash retrieval programs, and there's kind of a competition going on with Russia and China related to this. He did mention there's actually a document that I'll put up a screenshot of related to a deal, a 1971 agreement that the United States has, and this is a public document, with Russia related that they will notify each other related to unidentified objects. In other words, if UFOs could potentially cause a false flag operation. For instance, if there's a football field long object in our airspace, that we might think is Russian, it may accidentally cause a war. So supposedly there's agreements between various countries with each other to notify each other related to these objects. However, it's sad that it's funny that people think, well, all of these entire other potential things out there, whatever they are, visitors might have the same intentions, but us on Earth can't even get along. We're more worried supposedly about gathering information war related to fight each other than dealing with whatever this issue might be on a global scale. And yeah, apparently this agreement is to notify each other and avoid false flag incidents due to UAP provocation. Apparently, he says people have been killed protecting this secret. He says the videos that have been released so far are just the tip of the iceberg of the evidence that the government is in possession of. He says the reason why he feels the material he's seen from these craft are not of this earth. He says it's a strange, heavy atomic metal arrangement that we don't quite understand yet. And the emerging properties are just a strange mix of elements, very specifically engineered, not by humans. He says one of the reasons he's coming out is he thinks it shouldn't just be the military researching this. He says there could be this is like a worldwide problem and not just a military problem. And he feels if the public is aware of this and more people can research it, we could get a better solution to the problem. And the technology could be shared and the whole world could benefit from it. And he says he understands that there can be some dangers for sharing information about this stuff, which is why the governments might be hesitant to share it. But he also points out that nuclear energy is not a secret, but the US doesn't give out all their information on how they make nuclear weapons. So he feels that this secret could be let out into the public for the greater good of humanity without specific details related to national security being known. So there you go. This is pretty crazy stuff. And as I said, this guy is legitimate. This is just like mind-blowing stuff. And people like to take shots at him. There first of all, there could be a reason why he only gave 2 interviews, because sometimes people agree to do exclusive interviews. He did say he wasn't paid for this, and they're just not going to do multiple interviews. To come out public about stuff like this, why are you going to come out and do every single interview on the planet? Hopefully other people will come out. There have been some that have collaborated, some of it, and he has made a formal report. No, David Grusch does not have any connection to Stephen Greer. He actually said that he feels that these things are negative. I mean, anything that plays with nuclear silos, you cannot consider that positive. And he even mentioned in this, there's been wars going on since the beginning of time. And Dr. Jacques Vallée, and I already put this up the other week, who is a prominent UFO researcher, has also said there's been situations where nuclear war has almost occurred, and these things have not stepped in. Okay, well, you can say mental health all you want, but again, he did make a formal complaint to the supervising body, the Inspector General of the U.S. Intelligence Service, who said this was an urgent and critical complaint. So I guess it's all crazy, right? No, you're not taking my word that his word is good. You're taking the word of his credentials and the research I've done on it. You can do your own research. I never say anyone to take my word 100% on anything. I'm saying I've ever since this story first came out, when I think I became aware of it on Thursday or Friday, I've been nonstop researching it. And from the research I've done, I believe him. You guys can do your own research. Would I do another Robert Fuller interview? Yes. Yes, we're not alone. It doesn't appear so, but this is like the most credible person that's come out. Paul Hellyer, who I've interviewed from the former Canadian Minister of Defense, I did his last extended interview that has been picked up in documentaries and various TV series over the years. He did not know all of this inside information. He knew some, but not as much as this. So I don't know. All I know is I'd like to know what's inside of these things that are the size of American football fields. I'm very interested in this. NASA, by the way, yeah. You know what Paul Hellyer said in my interview with him, that NASA knows a lot more than they let on, but NASA recently held a UFO hearing. Stuff is coming out now. This is why this is weird, because stuff is coming out, and if you actually research and look this stuff up, there's tons of evidence out there. And I think disclosure is happening, guys. It's happening. I found that interview highly interesting. It's a scary situation, for sure. You know what? The only person that I will believe, as far as David's claims, the only person that I will take as far as picking apart the claims are the people that he submitted the photos and classified documents to, which is the Inspector General. I was in the Army for 2 years in the reserves, guys. You can't give classified information and not get thrown in jail. He was given permission to give some of this information. You can't go and put up classified photos and not get thrown in jail. Like, I know the deal with the military. Even though I was only at the low level of the military, it's highly strict. The court martials you can face are far worse than civilian court martials. Anyways, guys, have a great night.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our